Move with the present. Live in the present. Live in the present and accept the change. Imagine that if you are living in the absolute present and then try to analyze there is some change between T minus delta T and it is going to happen T plus delta T. It is going to happen in the future or it has happened in the past, that is T minus delta T or T plus delta T. But you are at T, at this moment you are at T, at this juncture, at this moment, at this micro, nano second, you are at this moment, at this second, at this moment. So the words fail to explain this moment. There is a limitation to the word. The moment I utter the word moment, the present has gone. So that's the beauty of the present. So if we try to practice this awareness of the present, then naturally I will be not be in a position to see the change because I am in the absolute present. I am in the awareness. What is the change? The question of change comes only when we go to with relative to the time. The change comes only in relation with respect to time. T minus delta T1, T minus delta T2, T minus delta T3, T plus delta T1 in future, T plus delta T2 in future. Like this moment minus 1 hour, like this moment minus 1 day, this moment minus 1 month, this moment minus 1 year, this moment minus 100 years. Like that. Similarly, this moment plus 1 hour, this moment plus 2 hours, this moment plus 1 day. Like that, it is with respect to the absolute presence of this time element. So, if we want to say the change is linked with only time. Imagine that you are in the absolute present. Imagine that I am in the absolute present. At this moment, then where is change? Where is the change? The question of change, phenomenon doesn't have the meaning. The question of change doesn't come into picture. But, it is with respect to the absolute self of the Atman, of the Ruh, of the soul, whatever you want to say, we can try to attempt to be in absolute presence. That's what the great prophets and the Lord himself said. But when it comes to the question of the mind, naturally the mind is a storehouse or a database. So when any incident or when any event is occurring at this moment, it will immediately go to the past and refer to that in the database. Or it will go for extrapolation in the future out of anxiety or out of fear or out of desire or out of expectation. What may happen? What will happen? How should it happen? Should it not happen like this to my liking? So all these things happen because this mind, unless and otherwise it is absolutely vigorously disciplined and trained, it cannot remain in the present. The moment, the mind, the intellect, everything absolutely lives in present at this moment, then the concept of change gets totally meaningless to the awareness, total awareness, absolute awareness, or to live in present, or living in the moment to moment. Then where is the change? For such people, for such prophets, or for such individuals, or such realized ask them, they will say like a child, what happened yesterday? They will not remember because they act in the present and they just surrender and submit to the God their actions, as we have seen in the previous chapter. Sayena vacha manasendriyaiva buddhyatmana va prakriti svabhava karomi yadyat sakalam parasmai narayanaya samapayam. The moment it has been surrendered to the Lord, then where is the question of having those impressions in the mind? So that doesn't occur. So when there is no impressions of the database in the mind or in the intellect or whatever you want to say in the brain, so there is no question of comparison from this moment to the past impression or the future expectation. The question of change loses its concept or loses its significance if we are trying to go to that extent of analyzing about the mind, about the time and about the change. But it's very difficult to do as long as the body, mind and intellect exist. That is an ideal situation that can happen only to 1 in billion or 1 in trillion, the greatest of the great prophets of the Avatara Purushas or the incarnate, God incarnate. Only for such people it can happen, but not for us. That is why it is said in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, and it is said in all the Upanishads and all the scriptures, these particular karma phala doesn't, the result of the action doesn't affect the God, Lord Krishna or any God or any prophet, because they don't have the doership. The moment I, with the ego, think that I am the doer, I have done something in the past, then the question of the change comes. The question of comparison comes. The question of discrimination comes. So, we are bound in the vicious circle of the change. So one needs to live in the absolute present and not to bother about the past and the future. Then there is no change at this moment to this body, mind and intellect. Is it possible? If it is not possible for an individual, for the reader, or for the speaker, or for the writer, or for the listener, then naturally we should accept with the awareness, yes, I have not reached that stage, to remain with the self or to remain this moment with the absolute present, moment to moment, then I have to accept the change magnanimously. Yes, I do have limitations. There is a different event happened at that time and now there is a difference that's happening. So there is a change. It's a natural process. It is the result of my own actions and reactions, and I cannot blame anybody. So then naturally the mind is made to accept, yes, there is a change. Yes, I accept the change. Yes, I am responsible for the change. Yes, I do enjoy or suffer this change. As long as my mind, body and intellect is there, it is undergoing change physically, mentally, intellectually, in the gross form or in the subtle form or in the conscious mind or in the subconscious mind or in the unconscious mind. Not only in this physical body, but all universe it is undergoing change. But imagine that I have come to the situation, an ideal or hypothetical situation, that I live in absolute presence. Whatever happens absolute awareness, with absolute subjective awareness. At this moment, there is no change because I am in the present. Even if it is happening something in this universe or in this world, that is the absolute micro second, that particular event, that particular incident or that particular phenomenon that is happening, it will be accepted by this body, mind and intellect at the subconscious, conscious and the unconscious level, because there is nothing to compare with the past or not to be worried about the future. But the question is it possible? Yes, it is possible, provided we all put in practice, put in contemplation, put in day-to-day life, the acceptance to start with, and gradually you all will come to the, one day or other will come to the situation, will come to the conclusion that to live in the present, to live in the moment, to accept this particular time, to accept this particular moment, then there will not be any problem. For me, with respect to change, because the question of change doesn't occur in my mind, because I am accepting everything. While I am accepting everything, there is the question of change. Initially, we know that there is a change between the past and the present. And initially, we know that there is going to be a change between the future and the present. So, we worry for the past and we worry for the future initially. But when we are trying to accept it as a natural gift or natural grace or natural phenomenon from the Lord, from the God who has created it, Jagadh, then we are accepting it graciously, without any grudging, without any frustration, without any dejection. The moment the mind has been trained and the natural phenomenon of the svabhava, of the character, of the nature of the mind has been tuned in such a way, then after some time you don't feel the effect of the impact of the change also, because you have already accepted it. You and I have already accepted it. Just like we have accepted from the childhood to the boyhood, boyhood to the youth, youth to the, in case you are married status, and the parents and the grandparents, and when we are in the deathbed. So it's a natural phenomenon. There is nothing to cry about it. So the change is the certainty. The only real certainty in the life is change. So, as another way of putting it is, uncertainty is the certainty of the nature. So, all these things that we refer to, either psychological, anthropological, or whatever the science which is related to social behavior, or human behavioral sciences, or if they reflect the same phenomenon in the scriptures, like the Bible, like Quran, like Bhagavad Gita, or Ramayana, or Mahabharata, or Buddha's scriptures, or Guru Granth Sahib of Guru Nanak Ji. Whatever we want to take, this boils down to this particular final, ultimate phenomenon. So, the word, either the change of the word that Jagadh also vanishes from the mind, and then ultimately the individual or the human being or any living entity in this universe, living or non-living entity in this universe, or animate or inanimate entity in this human world or in this universe, any atom in this world or any molecule in this world, whatever you wanted to take, the micro element in this world, finally it is bound by the time. It is in the limits of the time. There is a beginning and there is an end to the life. For any one which has born, it has to die. The one which is born, it has to die. The only thing which is unborn only cannot die. So because it is not born. So the question of seeing the change is born out of the time. Because we try to compare, we try to have the logistics behind that and try to compare that it has happened like this, it is happening like this, there is a change. He was behaving like that, he is behaving like this, there is a change. It is happening like this, it's going to happen in a different way in future, there is a change. So the change, if we look in a very, constructive or positive way, if we take even the Industrial Revolution, or if we take from the time immemorial, the uncivilized, so-called civilized and developed, underdeveloped, developed and fully developed, so on and so forth, there is a growth pattern in the universe, in this world. So it has to happen, the change has to happen. So if we take positively, if we view it in a developing or developed phenomenon, then we accept it. But if it is going in the negative direction, if we take negatively, and if we think that the things are not happening as we have accepted, then the change will cause a worry, and the change will cause a frustration or a dejection. One can attempt to resist the change, but what's the use? You cannot avoid it. Even if you resist or not resist, the change will happen. It is by its nature, it will happen. Only thing is, one should know how to acknowledge and accept it. The moment we try to acknowledge it and accept it, then we can embrace the change as a way of life. That's the way we have to live as a normal human being. Yes, there is a change. I accept it, I embrace it, and I acknowledge it. So, we pursue that actualization and willingly enter the change process. Know that the simple words of these great masters, of course it will be very difficult to put it in practice, but nothing is impossible if we try to be aware of these changes that is happening, and that's going to happen, and that has happened already. The moment we have this awareness of this change, then we will definitely acknowledge it, and we will definitely embrace this change as a way of our life. So, however, the great masters offer us as guidance and support for consciously journeying and for our search, to know the logic behind the change, to know the importance behind the change, to know the purpose behind the change, to know the reality of the change, to know the natural phenomenon of the world to exist, to continue to exist. This change is required and it is imminent, and it is the natural phenomenon which is both a necessary and sufficient condition which we have to accept. So the pathway into conscious change begins with what? Of course, with awareness. The path into conscious change begins with awareness. And the step of allowing input unsettle our status quo. We notice the pain, suffering, and we hope to overcome that, and a fear that we may not overcome that, and a desire to overcome that. All these things, that is mental, emotional, spiritual or physical, in noticing out our inner world of feeling and thought, in combination with our experience of the outer world of things and the people, we are reminded of our humanness, that our deep, innate, universal yearning for connection with our inside part and between ourselves and the world around us. It's our quest for this spiritualism, whatever you want to say, any ism, Hinduism, Islamism, Christianism, or Taoism, or Buddhism, or Jainism, whatever ism we want to call, we can call it, but it is simply, absolutely, without naming anything, it is the pure awareness-ism, if we want to say. It is the pure ism, that's all, the purism. The flow of oneness, the flow of integration, the flow of self-awareness, the flow of absolute awareness, the flow of accepting the change with awareness. So awareness permeates us like a foreign element inviting exploration. And though awareness is merely the first step and only an inner step, its power to stir the soul and shift our perspective is profound. So this awareness abides in witnessing any action that is being done without getting involved. In Bhagavad Gita there is one sloka, beautiful sloka by the Lord. He defines the karma yoga in a beautiful way. Akarma, sakarma and karma. The thing is, karma yoga, it is not simply an action. Karma yoga means karma, the action done with the subconscious mind thinking about God, the Creator, and that particular action is being done with His grace, with His energy, with His kindness of having been created this physical body, mind and intellect, and having created, He has given the enough energy and Shakti to do any particular action. So once this action is done because of His power indwelling in us, so the result of the action also has been given to him or shall be righteously should go to him. So that's how you become a karma. You don't have that right to claim that you have done that particular job. Even if you claim that you have done that particular job momentarily, the next moment when the job is completed, with your conscious awareness, with your conscious mind of awareness, without any ego awareness, that particular ego awareness should be there, that I don't claim this particular result of this particular event, because everything has been borrowed from the universe and from the God, and so all the things should go back to the God, so thereby you submit and surrender to the God, fruits of the act. So this is the opposition of ego-ness, or the no question of claiming for the results of human act. That's the beauty, then nothing is left. No results of the action, the karma phala, in your mind at an instant. The moment it has that, the actor, you are the person who is responsible for the action and for the result, karma and karma phala, then naturally you have to enjoy or suffer this body, mind and intellect, and this particular vicious circle will continue. And if we believe in the rebirth, then